So I'm talking to her, and I said, "Yeah, okay, well, it's awesome. So what are you getting this for your dorm?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. Well, like, what all you be hooking up?" And she's like, "Well, I've got all of the current gen consoles and all of like the old classic consoles, like back to the NES."
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh, wow!" I was like, "That's awesome." I was like, "So you're a big gamer?" And she said, "Yes, I love games." I said, "Well, that's really really cool." I was like, "Because I do a gaming podcast." She's like, "Oh, cool. What's the podcast?" And I told her, and she's like, "I feel like I've heard that before." I was like, "Well, do you know who Daniel Kaiser is?" And she's like, "Oh my God, yeah!" And I said, "He actually used to be my roommate. We do the show together." And she's like, "Oh, I can't believe you know Daniel Kaiser." And I was like, "Yeah, don't be that excited. It's not."
This is Epic Battle Cry Skirmish 206, a grinding badge of honor!
Hello and welcome to Epic Battle Cry. This is the place where we cut through the crap to bring you the real deal on the gaming industry today. I'm your host, Tony Grice, and with me, as always, is Brent Adams and Daniel Kaiser. Daniel, how you doing this week, man?
I'm doing great, TG in 3D, and just like Miley Cyrus, I've been working on my twerking this past week, so I've been tweaking my twerking, if it were, but, I'm ready for an action-packed episode of EBC, so I'm ready for you to come this way so I can back that thing up. I'll keep my tongue in for the foreseeable future.
Keep your foam finger the hell away from me, Daniel Kaiser.
But yeah, I'm actually going to experiment with that look, I think, at some point in a future episode of GTTV or something like that. So I
really encourage that because, I'm kind of gunning for your slot. And
Can I just point out, too, somebody on somewhere on the internets posted something I thought was very insightful. Do you remember the character Jim Carrey used to do back in Living Color?
Oh,
where
my God,
he was the bodybuilder with the little tiny, tiny braids?
Bodybuilder.
Honestly looked hotter than Miley Cyrus looked the other night.
Yeah.
And somehow less offensive, too.
I don't think anyone's going to be gunning for her slot for the foreseeable future.
Jeez. All right. Brent, how you doing this week, man?
What's up? My deserters of disaster! My absconders of anarchy! How art thou?
The absconders? What?
Are you making shit up now?
After 200 episodes, he decided to buy a dictionary, which is good. No, that's
actually,
a good one.
I should publish a book. I should publish the alliterative dictionary of Epic Battle Cry.
That would be like 8 pages.
It would. It would not be. I did not say it would be a long book.
It'd be like quadruple spaced, and we might get like
it's
dozen pages.
Book would actually kind of be divided like across the horizontal, and like above.
Only we can make a book difficult.
Like on the top side of the book, it'd be like things like absconders, and then on the bottom side, it would be things like anarchy. And so you could just sort of like flip through the book and put your own intros together.
That's interesting. I figured it'd be just a coloring book with a bunch of blank pages and comes with a pack of only red crayons. Just blood.
Sounds more accurate.
Yeah. All right, well, we got quite a few interesting stories up this week, so let's go ahead and run through the Gauntlet.
The Gauntlet.
The Gauntlet!
All right, guys, we're here in the Gauntlet, and we've got a couple of interesting stories up. The first is the news that Bethesda is trying to work on a way to let you play the new Elder Scrolls Online without having a Xbox Live Gold account. Is that true, Brent?
That is true in the sense that they are trying to do it. Whether or not they will be successful is, of course,
no, they're not going to be successful.
Absolutely assured a failure. There is no chance in hell that this is going to happen, but we really applaud them. Well, I mean, who knows? I mean, Ballmer's leaving Microsoft. Anything's possible these days. But and actually, that might be the key to all this, because what's happening is Bethesda is they're in talks. They're talking to Microsoft. They're having a dialogue, and essentially, what they would like to do is they would like to allow the Elder Scrolls Online to be played by anybody on Xbox, even those who do not have an Xbox Live Gold membership, which is, of course, traditionally been required to play online games. Moving into the next generation, you're also going to have a PSN subscription. They don't really talk about anything in relation to Sony as far as discussion with them, but They are saying that that they are pushing and that they would really like to see Microsoft. I suppose what they're asking for is an exemption. I suppose that what they're asking for is for their game to be exempted from that policy, so that people who are already paying the $15 subscription fee each month for the Elder Scrolls Online won't have to pay an Xbox Live membership as well.
So it's as if they're Congress and they're asking to be exempt from Obamacare. That makes sense. I do think it is kind of interesting because isn't there a fee that they charge for playing the game, right?
Well, yes, as we talked about last week and my battle cry, they came out recently and said they're going to adopt the traditional monthly fee model, the subscription fee model, and at $15 a month, you get the entire game. So as we spoke about last week, they felt that this franchise is unique. The experience they're building is unique. They didn't want to restrict it in any way or incorporate some of the free-to-play tactics that are usually about, paying to unlock certain areas or items or whatever. So, as Brent is saying here, it would be kind of unfair for Xbox One owners who already pay the Xbox Live subscription to have to pay that extra $15 a month to do that, especially when on Sony's platform they won't have to. This is going to be a big hurdle for Microsoft. I think it does limit the audience for Bethesda if it is the case, because a lot of people will be turned off by the fact that they have to do that. But, I do think that Microsoft would be wise to at least think about, with a game like this, paving the way, constructing an element of Xbox Live that does allow for this type of stuff. So, as Brent said, they're talking. There's dialogue happening. I don't know that it will happen because it will be the first to break that mold. But it's a big game, and Bethesda is going to be behind it in a big way, and hopefully Microsoft will as well. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it could almost be interesting if, I don't know if Microsoft. I mean, they would never do this either. But maybe they could work on some sort of collaboration where maybe it's a less fee, like instead of being like $15 a month on the other platforms, you do have to have Xbox Live Gold, but maybe Microsoft somehow supplements part of the fee, and maybe you only have to pay $5 a month to play the game or something.
Yeah,
maybe
it does seem like
I don't know.
They're going to have to do. It seems like they're going to have to work out something, given the fact that MMOs on consoles have not been a really huge market. We've seen it with DC Universe Online, but of course that's free to play at this point on the PlayStation. So it seems
it's just going to get bigger this generation.
Well, certainly so. And I mean, the Elder Scrolls Online is going to be a pretty big entry into the MMO field. I think that we all anticipate that's going to have quite a bit of attention surrounding it. So it seems to me that if Microsoft wants, assuming they care one way or the other, if they want MMOs on their console, it seems like it would be in their best interest to try to work something out, because paying essentially to play online games on top of paying for the game itself, I think it's definitely going to turn some people off. Having said that, to a certain degree, that just kind of, it comes with the territory a little bit. The difference is that traditionally, people who have been paying to play these games have been doing it on PC, where they don't have any overhead for online access the way they do on the console, or the way they're going to on both consoles starting in November.
The only equivalent I could kind of think of is like Netflix. Netflix is a service you still have to pay for outside of Xbox Live Gold, but you still also have to have Xbox Live Gold.
And subsequently, a lot of people watch Netflix on their PlayStation.
Exactly. Well, I was gonna say, I think the PlayStation 3, at least a few years ago, I don't know if it's still the case, but I think a year or two ago, was announced to be the biggest single platform that it's watched on. Which, I mean, I think you could argue that that's at least somewhat of an argument that they need to come up with a better option.
I agree.
All right, well, so that's some maybe less positive Xbox news, but maybe we have a little bit more positive news here. So we got at Gamescom, we got an official announcement from Sony that the PlayStation 4 would be hitting shores in North America on November 15th, and we did not get an official release date about the Xbox One, but we might have got a little hint at when it may possibly be coming out. DK, when's the rumor where it might possibly come out?
Well, it's still crazy to me, as we talked about again last week, that Microsoft hasn't announced the release date. Am I the only one who thinks this is kind of nuts? I mean, we've got PAX, which it might be, I don't know. I mean, PAX is in Seattle. They're in Seattle. Maybe there'll be some sort of thing surrounding PAX, but in the next couple of days over this upcoming weekend. But, right now, we don't know when this thing is coming out, which is just really weird to me. So anyway, the rumor going around right now comes from Kotaku, who is tipped by a marketing group that provides what they say is signage and product placement for Walmart. And they informed Kotaku that along with several games like Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, Grand Theft Auto, and all their kind of respective release dates being confirmed for midnight launches, there was a little tidbit in there about the Xbox One launching on November 8th, 2013, trumping PlayStation 4 and launching a week early, although it is worth noting that did not have the same entry for confirmed in the email that they received. So whether or not Microsoft is considering that at this point, it seems weird to me that it's not locked in stone and everything's ready to go. But we talked about on the show last week about them actually trying to do that, come out before the PlayStation 4. If they do come out on November 8th, will it make that much of a difference in the grand scheme of things? I mean, you got that first week of initial, excitement, but it's $100 more, and you can bet that Sony's going to be aggressive with marketing to signify that. So what do you guys think? A, do you think it's going to launch November 8th ahead of the PS4 on November 15th? And B, if it does, how much of an impact will that have?
I think that there's a good chance that it could. I mean, November 8th is as good as any other day. Although I'm trying to remember from that article we were pulling from last week that laid out, sort of like made the case for November 22nd. I'm trying to remember what the specific reason for November 8th not being favored was.
The last two Xbox releases have been on right in the 21st, 22nd time frame. So they're just kind of assuming, and it's been the week prior to Black Friday. So it's I think that's the common kind of thought processes that they would do around the same time.
All right. Well, in any case, I think that it's entirely possible that maybe Microsoft has not announced the date because they wanted to wait for Sony to announce their date, and then they wanted to preempt them by a little bit. Now, whether or not it'll make a difference, no. The same way we talked about last week, if Microsoft releases a week later, I don't think that it really matters in the grand scheme. If they release a week early, I don't think it really matters in the grand scheme. These two consoles are coming out so closely to each other that I don't really think one coming out ahead of the other is ultimately going to amount to much of anything.
Yeah,
I don't know, man. That first week, they could sell a couple million units early, and no, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I think I do totally agree with you. I think it is possible. I actually kind of think at this point it actually might be the case that it does come out on the 8th. It's definitely not coming out on the 15th. I think it'd be just silly, and they'd be asking for just causing retailers headaches by bringing out the same day. They could bring out a week after, a week before, either one. It's not going to at this point. It's not going to make a real difference. I do think that there is maybe some small, tiny part of Microsoft that thinks that making it out to customers early is. There's like, I don't know.
Well, that's maybe true, but there's a threshold to that statement.
Yeah, I just like I said last time, if either one of them announced a date, say a month prior to when the other was,
like October.
I think that actually could get that type of person who's like, well, crap, man, maybe I'll just hold off on the other and see if somebody's got one of these for sale, and then they buy it, they buy a couple games, and then they don't have money to buy the other system, that's out there. But I mean, a week, it's just
considering the $100 price point, I think people are willing to wait a week.
A week to me is nothing. I think people are always willing to wait a week. Now, to be honest with you, maybe the idea is to see what kind of play this gets. Maybe this is kind of hinting at that.
Yeah, sure.
And maybe they say, bam, we're releasing it, end of October, whatever, something they're just maybe floating
it's
down
out
there.
now. Go buy it.
It's out today.
2 weeks, even 2 weeks, I think would be a little bit more significant.
Yeah, no, I agree. With every week earlier they do it, I think it becomes more and more impactful. Yeah. And let's be honest with you, they are being so kind of, in my opinion, unusually cagey about the release date.
Yeah, really. Kind of gun shy after all the beatings they've taken this year.
Well, I still maintain that this is their sort of like, we are going to have news about Xbox One every week. And I got to be honest, I still kind of stand by my thing that I feel like they are somehow almost like even if it's a fake sense of importance, they're still in stories every week, whereas Sony has not been quite as often. And so this is just one more thing that people are like checking blogs and checking websites for every other day to see, like, has it been announced yet? Has it been announced yet?
I know, I mean, we talked about this last week and everything, but I'm dubious of this whole kind of like stealth marketing campaign that you're attributing to Microsoft. I mean,
it's
like
genius.
Like last week, when you were saying that Microsoft, is rumored to have twice as many pre-orders as PlayStation 3. Why aren't they saying that?
Through certain retailers. Well, because
we've all heard, that Sony's got 1 million pre-orders for the PlayStation 4. We've all seen that headline all over the web. If Microsoft is beating them, even at certain retailers in certain markets, why the fuck aren't they screaming that at the top of their lungs from the highest vantage point they can? Why would they allow people to think that they are in a weakened position? I can't wrap my brain around how they think that helps them.
I don't know. I still kind of maintain that it's just another feather in their cap to announce down the road. Like, let's say a month prior to it, they announce, "Hey, we have twice the pre-orders," and maybe it's I don't know. Maybe that could be wrong. And let's be honest with you, pre-orders is not even an indicator of what is going to sell even day one.
No,
tons of people long term.
Tons of people will pick up pre-orders that won't necessarily buy the console.
Yeah,
I do think that the impression I'm getting is that it will be slightly easier to get Xbox Ones to stores than PS4s. I think the PS4 arguably has because of the amount of GDDR5 they've got in there, it's a little bit more expensive, a little bit harder to get hold of, so that there might be, as a whole, fewer PS4s at the launch window than there could be of Xbox Ones.
Yeah.
And, I think that could maybe play to their advantage.
As close as these systems are coming out, that could be significant.
Yeah. I think so, yeah. I think that could be something, if it ends up being the case. I mean, it's just conjecture,
And I would say, just Microsoft has an opportunity to do something, big by launching earlier. We talked about that last week. They didn't even announce a release date, much less say that they were going to launch earlier, because I think we all agree that, whether it's 7 days before or 7 days after, that's just weak.
Of all the things you could have contributed to this segment, it was that.
Oh, goodness gracious. All right, well, so next up,
Lord.
Next up, we've got the announcement that RYSE, Son of Rome, one of the launch titles for the Xbox One, is going to have microtransactions in the multiplayer aspect of it. Brent, what are we going to be able to get with these nice little dips into our pocket?
Well, according to a report by videogamer.com, a Microsoft producer made the comparison between RYSE Son of Rome and its equipment-based multiplayer transactions, and compared it to something like FIFA Ultimate Team or even Mass Effect 3. And they said that the way that you're going to get armor will work very similarly to those games, that you're going to earn gold while you're playing multiplayer only, and that you will use that gold to buy booster packs. The booster packs are in 3 different tiers: bronze, silver, and gold. And depending on which pack, which of those tiers you buy, like if you buy a bronze pack as opposed to a gold pack, it basically determines whether or not you are guaranteed to get a common item versus, say, a rare item. So those transactions can be facilitated through real-world money, in addition to just grinding in the multiplayer to earn gold without actually having to pay real cash for it. So they talk about how the way that you play multiplayer, the stats can kind of change depending on whether or not you're focusing on grinding for money versus grinding for experience, whether you're playing with like a fresh player versus somebody who's got a lot of time in the game. So there's some kind of interesting facets to this, but ultimately it does, I think, all kind of come back to this conversation that that we have from time to time about paying to win. Yeah. And this isn't even a free-to-play game. This is a game you're going to pay full price for, and then on top of that, you're going to have the option to augment the multiplayer experience with with these loot packs. So what do you guys think? Is this one of those things that I don't really see it really see it going away. It doesn't seem like companies are backing off of it. It just seems like they keep trying to reinvent this idea and find new ways of implementing it.
I don't even think, are they really even reinventing it, or are they just sort of slightly repackaging it?
Yeah, repackaging it, and that's the problem. And I really feel like you have to think about the implementation when you're doing something like this. A, you're charging a customer a full price for a video game. And secondly, you're going to give them the ability to basically accelerate the process of multiplayer character development by throwing money at it, which I know they're going to balance it out, and I know they're going to do their best to say that it's fair and all this, that, and the other thing. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't fit within the context of the game. Look at, they mentioned FIFA. Okay, FIFA Ultimate Team works. Why? Because sports are associated with sports cards and trading cards. Every kid's, gotten a baseball card in his life or something, or a soccer card or a football card. So it makes sense.
Not every kid has bought a bronze-tipped spear.
Yeah, just you, Brent. But, the bottom line is that makes sense within context of the game world. So buying quote-unquote packs of these armaments or whatever in order to upgrade your character just doesn't really fit. If they find a way to do something unique or whatever, that's my big thing context-wise. Secondly, I mean, that's on the surface, but at the core of it is, where does this, my question is, where does this development, what is this funding developmentally? If all the content is already in the game and the game's been paid for at $60, why are we still giving money to this game and the people behind it?
To support the multiplayer, presumably, right?
Like they're going to keep making more and create. I mean, that's expected. I mean, is that expected in everything?
Let me ask you though: are they saying this is content that you can only get through these means, or that you can get early, or that you can get like
they haven't said one way or the other with respect to that specific point.
That to me is a big piece of it, because to me it's one of those things where, and I'm not big on this because I really appreciate the free to play model where you can play as much of a game as you want.
Yes, I agree.
But if you want certain things, you got to keep playing and playing and playing, and you'll luckily get that one character,
or you can
get
pay
that
the money and not have to go through all the work.
Exactly,
and
to
the
me,
game doesn't limit your access to the initial experience. Like it lets you find out whether or not you even like the game.
Well, no, I mean, I think that there is something to be said for that, though. If you pay $60 and that's all you're wanting to pay, you can still have access to every bit of the content. Yeah. You just have to play it longer or work at it harder.
I'm playing Marvel Heroes right now.
Yeah,
and, that's free to play, and they've tweaked the system a little bit now. But there are basically there are these in-world drops that you can pick up, and if you get enough of them, you can unlock characters and costumes, which traditionally are the things that really cost you big bucks. You've got to play a lot of that game to get enough of those in order to unlock, say, a costume or something like that. But you can do it, and
even that, isn't it still sort of random? It's not, you can't just pick the one you want, can you? Or you
can. Like basically what they've done is they've changed it up now where you're getting like these little like in-game bonus items, and you just have to collect enough of them to trade for a costume or something like that.
The one thing they did that I still don't quite agree with, though, is because even that game had some exclusives that you could only get by buying things.
The symbiote Spider-Man outfit.
Yeah, exactly. That's so funny. That's the exact one I'm thinking of. So that's the thing I don't like. I don't like when you are, and they do this all the time with like, DLC, with pre-order bonuses, things like that, where there is content that you can only get by doing that.
Yeah.
That sort of irritates me. I don't necessarily mind this where, hey, if you want to, it's your prerogative. The only thing, though, is I think, if on the multiplayer, it's maybe not so big, but if it's like something in single player that you can get some sort of armor or weaponry or whatever, I think they should, at least on the back of the box, say 20 hours of gameplay. Or 5 if you use the microtransactions and buy all like the cool shit that makes you more powerful.
And the other thing to that I kind of wonder about, and this is going off the reservation a little bit, admittedly, but the thing that I wonder about is, and I don't know, I don't play enough competitive multiplayer games to really have an opinion one way or the other.
Well, thumb wrestling.
I wonder about how other players feel about that. Do other players feel that there is some sort of inherent lack of fairness in people being able to, and not necessarily get shit that like if you're a paying player, it's not like you can necessarily get stuff that the non-paying player can't get to. It's simply that you can get to it a lot faster. I wonder, if people, if people have like a really, really deep sense of unfairness around that. And then the other question that I would ask is, if that is the case, wouldn't it make a lot more sense to have the microtransactions, be for things that you're getting within the narrative part of the game, where it doesn't matter, if you're getting something faster than another player?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the ticket. I mean, like, if you can be creative and if you can make a compelling experience, then you deserve to get paid. I mean, in a game like this, I mean, for me, I just imagine, like, nobody's walking around ancient Rome freaking buying packs of cards, but possibly, a gladiator might bribe one of the, jailers to leave a weapon outside of the gate as he enters. So maybe they have a character and he's got a name, and they know, like, each and every week he's going to be, making loot available, and you could bribe him or something like that to leave something as you're entering the arena. There's a new weapon as you're walking in, something like that. Cool. Yeah, I'd pay $1 to bribe a virtual character so that I have a better weapon when I enter the arena, if it's cool. But just packs of I don't know. To me, it's about context, and it also has to, I don't want to feel nickeled and dimed, and it has to be something that I feel is rewarding to the ultimate experience without just ultimately just gunning for my wallet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think the thing you kept mentioning was context, and I totally agree with you there. Like, that is one thing I do love about the way FIFA does it, is the whole, and again, it's also it's random. You buy the packs, and it really is just like buying packs of cards back in the day. And I think kids today almost don't even kind of can appreciate, like, the fact that of randomness of things. You'd buy a pack of cards, you had no idea who you were going to get.
Totally.
And hell, that's the thing that I think is kind of great about that, and it just makes sense. All right, well, so next up, last but not least, we have in the gauntlet this week, we have the announcement of the time frame in which we are going to see Infamous Second Son hit the PS4. DK, when can we get our hands on it?
Well, obviously one of the most highly anticipated games on the platform. The Infamous franchise has been big for Sony, and people are looking for Sucker Punch's follow-up, Second Son, to hit the PlayStation 4. I've seen a lot of comments, people talking about, hey, I've never really played the Infamous games before, but this one seems like a standout action title that they wanted to check out and doing the platform well. We now know that it's going to launch in February of 2014, meaning that you won't have too long to wait after you pick up the PlayStation 4 in November, or maybe for Christmas, to get your hands on this game. So are you guys deterred by the fact that this isn't a launch title for Sony and for Sucker Punch, or do you think that it will it's good to kind of hold some things back and kind of space releases a little bit? Is this going to fit well? We don't know too much of what else is confirmed for February 2014, but right now this has got to be one of the showstoppers in that month, I'd say.
I would think so, and there's always there's always a little bit of a bump, early in the year, like February, March, where you see a fairly good roster of games coming out, kind of the flip side to to the Rocktober time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a good launch window, and as far as the game, in the context of the PlayStation 3, the launch and everything, I think it does work. I think that if you look at the launch lineup for the PlayStation 3, probably the strongest first-party title they've got, off the top of my head, is Killzone.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got that, and then you've got a good slate of third-party things like Watch Dogs, like Assassin's Creed 4. You've got a good slate of third-party things that can kind of carry you through to the end of the year. So I think that this is relatively well-timed as far as kind of kicking off 2014 with a big title, and then I'm sure that that they've got some other things that they're going to want to have out, obviously next fall as well. So as far as like kind of pacing and consumption of games on that console, I think that it fits relatively well. I think that they need something. They need a bump right now when the console comes. I say right now, they need a bump when the console comes out, and they've already got a few things lined up for that. But then they need to kind of keep spacing those things out, so there's always something to look forward to that's not too far away.
And games that are platform exclusive, because everything you've mentioned and most of them are the games that are cross-generational. This is something that is let's see what the PS4 can do kind of thing.
Right.
That's kind of why I don't think the timing is that great. Now, I'll be honest. I think the timing has probably more to do with the game's just not quite ready. Like, I mean,
yeah,
I think
it's development. I don't think that it was strategy per se.
Exactly. Like, I think if behind the scenes, if this game is ready to go at launch, it needs to be a launch date title. And the reason I say that is because when you have console releases like so far apart, like a year apart, like the previous generation, it's a whole different ball game. When you have them this close, I gotta believe that there are the majority. I think there's a ton of gamers out there that are gonna buy everything. You know, that are gonna buy, or at least the two major platforms, Xbox and PS4. The Wii U, and I can appreciate, but yeah, no, it's not one of the big two. But I think if you've got a choice right at launch, you need to have your AAA titles out there. And this, in my opinion, is one of the best looking early launch window titles Sony has going for it. If there was any chance they could have it on launch day, they need to, because they need a reason, I think, for people to make a choice. You know, you've got, I said this last week, I think you have a slightly stronger first part or exclusive lineup for Xbox than you do for the PS4, you know, at launch.
Agree.
And I think that there's a decent amount of people that are just kind of thinking like, okay, well, which one would I rather have right now? Okay, I'm going to go this route. And whatever direction they go, that's, you know, for a lot of people, that's going to be the console they stick with for, you know, maybe the console cycle. You know, they might not buy another system. So, you know, you need to really make a good argument for your system up front. Now, I think there's a lot of people that would eventually buy, you know, both platforms or whatever, and it kind of becomes a moot point. But I think for the first, 2 years, I think that it's pretty big. And for this to come out in February, it's just far enough, in my opinion, off for a lot of people to kind of not really be really on their radar. Now, if you're buying a PS4 at launch, no matter what, well, absolutely, the game looks phenomenal. Like I think it honestly is probably the game, other than maybe some of the multi-platform titles. It's easily the first party game I'm the most excited about on PlayStation 4, or first party, but you know, exclusive to PlayStation 4.
Right.
But I don't know. I worry a little bit that, you know, I think it would sell systems in November. I don't know how many systems. It will sell some, but I don't think it'll have as much impact in February as it would if it could come out earlier. But I think more than likely it just won't be ready.
Yeah, it's probably just logistics. But hopefully the fence sitters aren't going to use Infamous as an opportunity to make the. You know, I'm building up to a pun.
Yes,
so
we all know.
And you know it's
going to
use second son, make the PS4 the second son in the console war. That was bad.
Yes, I don't even know where you're going there. Like, this is a little game we play now, is to try to figure out where you're going with the ending pun.
In this case, it was absolutely
and you beat us because we have no fucking clue what you're talking about. Yeah, exactly.
That's why I'm infamous for it.
All right, guys, we're in the main topic this week, and we're going to talk a little bit about the length of the games that we're playing these days. So, you know,
size matters.
There's a lot of talk about, you know, the fact that whether size matters or not. And, you know, I keep maintaining that no, it doesn't.
In my defense,
no, it doesn't. No, in all seriousness, you know, there's a lot to be said for, you know, with all the different mediums, all the different ways that we can play games these days. What is there? There are so many different experiences you can have, and what is the right, you know, frame to be playing them around. So, Brenton, you want to kind of run us down here? What sort of? There's an article that kind of talked a little bit about this. What sort of they kind of go into?
So, Joseph Bernstein over at BuzzFeed.com wrote an interesting piece on this called "The After Dinner Video Game," and he examines the phenomenon of certain players. I definitely think that this applies to older players, people probably in our generation and our peers. And the limited amount of time that we have to play games, and how the way that games are structured right now may actually be detrimental to people's ability to play those games. He talks about, and you know, another facet of this is, of course, the amount of money we're kind of paying per entertainment hour, which is, you know, something that's often discussed in relation to the price of video games and how actually video games are very, very favorable when viewed through that lens. He talks about how a typical movie is 90 to 120 minutes, typical television show 25 to 55 minutes, a music album that you're going to buy, maybe 40 to 70 minutes. But when you say the average video game is
it's all over the map.
Y minutes long, it is all over the map. And that's never been more true than it is right now, where you have these enormous AAA games, things like Skyrim, that could take 100 hours, before you could even complete, in quotes, sitting right beside something like Gone Home that you can play through maybe 2.5, 3 hours. And the prices that we pay for these games, not all the time, but sometimes it does reflect, kind of the amount of entertainment that we're going to get out of them. And he talks about The Last of Us, and how that was a game that he played through in a few 4 to 5 hour settings over consecutive nights, and how he kind of had like a wildly different experience, playing that game in that context. And also about how games like The Last of Us, and I can attest to this, sometimes make it really difficult to kind of play them piecemeal, to sit down and play for maybe 30 minutes or an hour after dinner, and then pick it up again the next night, because there's not necessarily a really logical stopping point. By contrast, he talks about Telltale's The Walking Dead, which is an interesting contrast to The Last of Us on a number of levels. But in this specific context, he's talking about how The Walking Dead makes it extremely easy to play in this sort of piecemeal after-dinner fashion. Once you've gotten home from work, you've had dinner with your family, and now you've got a little time to kill before you go to bed. That's where he does his gaming, and that's true for a lot of us as well. So this is a really kind of interesting look at how people, again, I think generationally this is more significant to us than people who are much younger and don't have families and have more time to invest in games. Yes, that's it.
Don't eat dinner. Yeah.
But anyway, just to finish up, the thing that I really want to kind of ask you guys to comment on is, do you think, as opposed to us seeking out games that suit that timetable better, do you think that developers should actually begin structuring their games to be more friendly to that quasi pick up and play sort of scheduling?
Well, I think if they're creative enough that it can cater to both. I don't think that it needs to be in an hour block. I don't think it needs to be in a half an hour block, or an endless type of stream where you make that cutoff yourself. I think if they're creative, there are instances I could think of that that allow the game to kind of have a natural break wherever, mission flow, things like that. That say, okay, I can put the controller down and walk away. I'm at a good set point right here. But the bottom line for me though is I've never really equated the length of a game to its monetary value. There's extreme,
or its quality, even, really,
or its quality. Yeah, there's I recently mentioned Brothers. That's not a very long game. It's 3 to 4 hours, maybe a little bit longer or whatever. That game was fantastic and worth every penny. Whereas some games I feel go on just for the sake of adding that. They want to put on the back of the box how long the game is, or be able to talk about it. And I've never quite understood why that is such a selling point to people, because it's almost like they feel they have to justify the game's cost by going back and doing missions where you're circling back and finding things in old areas and this, that, and the other thing, where I'd prefer just for the game to conclude. Like that, I've reached the point in a lot of games where I've said, you know what, I love this game already. Like, you can end right now, and I would love it. Games like Uncharted and even Tomb Raider and action adventure games like that. A game like Dishonored allows you to save anywhere, obviously, structured pretty well. But I think at the heart of this argument, though, is the fact that there's no way to isolate a formula for interactive entertainment, because unlike movies, unlike television, unlike music albums, there is almost limitless scope to what a interactive piece of entertainment could be. And it also kind of, changes our expectation going in. So it's a very interesting topic that I'm mostly interested to see how people address in the next generation of gaming, because a lot of things will be digitally downloaded, and the mindset will be acquire it fast, start playing through it. Are you going to play the first hour? Are you going to get to a certain checkpoint and then, be able to turn it off? But one of the things that he said in the article that was really interesting to me was that, he played these games in consecutive nights, but even then, the nights were, different. One night his roommate was with him. For me, that's always the case. It's different every night. Your mood is different. Things are different.
Those three little freeloaders you call children.
Yeah. No, but your
Another
mood
man
is
in
different.
your room every night's a different person.
No, but like when you go to watch a movie, you're in the same emotional state from start to finish because it's a confined experience.
Yes.
Whereas, you could have a great day and go into it and think different of a game as opposed to the next day, maybe not so much. And then it feels like work more than. So you're increasing the odds that there's going to be this hit and miss type of experience the longer it goes on. But certain experiences like Skyrim demand it.
Yeah, I think, there's a huge thing. I think what you were leading up to, Daniel, is just the fact that there is no one formula that would or should work for every game. And so, every game has to do it a little different. And let's be honest with you, I think certain games are more maybe about the experience of playing the game, not just saying just the gameplay, but just, it's about existing in a world that you can do different things in. And for those games, that might be an easier transition to make day by day, being able to do sort of another part of it. But like an experience, like something like, honestly, like The Last of Us or another type of game that is set in it's telling a story. It's almost as if it's an interactive movie. It's a longer, kind of singular story that kind of is encapsulated or should be. And that maybe is something that's better played in longer, more consecutive kind of game spans. I think one reason you mentioned The Walking Dead, Brent, and to me, unless I may be completely wrong on this, but was it not originally developed with like the iPad and things like that in mind?
No, it came
thought
to
the first one was.
It came to the iPad later.
Eventually, okay.
But no, it was originally designed for consoles and PC.
Okay, but it originally was designed in the episodic content, right? Like
yes,
you had like the different.
The idea of it being like essentially a television series, as opposed to like The Last of Us being a movie, if you want to make the analogy, that was part of the original concept. Yeah,
and I think maybe that was at least in some sort of way they were thinking of making it in bite-sized pieces, if you will, like things that you could kind of experience in nice little chunks that, were a good experience for the amount of playtime you had to put in them, but not necessarily like you have to sit down and experience this whole thing together. And so for that, I think that worked. But, I think there's going to be lots of games that just is not what would be best for it.
Yeah.
There's something, just one last thing, and then I'll shut up. The last thing, I promise. The last thing DK was kind of leading up to that I actually kind of think was an interesting concept that I think if you'd gone a little bit further with is that, some games you get to a point where I'm good with, I'm like, okay, you know what, that was perfect. And yet there's still, in some cases, a lot of content. I almost would argue, Brent, you and I have talked about this a couple of times with like TV series and different things where it's almost like they get to a point where it's almost, it might be better if they do wrap things up. Like it's not necessarily better that they keep coming out with content, because I think it somehow almost kind of lessens the original content. Like I'm not saying that other content isn't as good. It's just that like when you look at it as a whole, you're like, as a whole it was okay. This part was great. I liked it. And so I almost think that there could be some sort of restraint shown.
Yeah,
but it's hard to it's hard to find that restraint, especially when you're dealing with something that's successful and it's bringing in money. It's hard to kind of have the restraint to cut yourself off.
Even
but
a
that's
game
when
like
you bring out another game, not like continual DLC or like all this extra stuff. Like I think that we've lost that a little bit in this current generation.
Yeah, but let's look back at when we were kids, though. Games were a lot more difficult. Some of them, they were shorter, but they were difficult. Some of them were really long and restrictive in certain areas. But when they were punishing. If you played a game and you put 6 hours in and you get to the end, if you die, it's like it's over. You got to start over. We're used to having save points. We're used to having things, and I think as gaming evolves, as the gamer evolves, I do think that more games need to really focus on offering that main chunk. I never fully completed Skyrim, although I've had one hell of a time playing the game. If I were to make Skyrim or the next Elder Scrolls game, it's something where you put in it a 15 to 20 hour main quest that is like the key, and then once you do that, maybe it unlocks all the, maybe through the story, you maybe gain access to dragons and could, fly to other areas or whatnot. And so it's more, the time should be more exploratory as opposed to story driven. I think one of the big things that's inherent to gaming as well is that, if you're not beating something, you feel a lack of success or a sense of failure that you haven't beat it, you haven't completed this. Whereas movies, you just got to finish the movie.
If I'm not beating something, I feel a lack of success.
For me, game developers need to consider that they want to make the gamer feel as though they've accomplished something, but always put something new in front of them. So when the scope is so massive,
that's like MMOs, right? I mean, isn't that the whole kind of like carrot and stick thing we always talk about MMOs doing so well, where it's like, you've accomplished something, but there's still a little bit
but
more.
A lot of times it's really meaningless. In a game like Skyrim or in the Elder Scrolls universe, what I envision is that there's a 15 to 20 hour quest that, I could play over the course of a week or two, but flipping that switch that once I beat it, it actually becomes more compelling. It's not just, now I get to adventure around.
I get what you're saying, but not every game lends itself to that as well as open world games do. The ability to explore and to, find locations with NPCs that have missions for you facilitates that type of gameplay. And whereas, something like, I'm trying to think of like a
like
really
Uncharted or
something like Uncharted does not offer that ability because it really is a linear narrative experience.
Yeah, I mean, like the fact is, that's the great thing about games is that you have all these different experiences. We talk about like the things that certain games do well and certain games don't do well. I mean, it's in most cases totally different opinions. Like there are people that just don't like. I can appreciate, but I don't care for something like World of Warcraft. I've played it a few times before, and that mechanic works perfectly because constantly I'd be like, okay, I'm just gonna go. All right, well, fuck, I'm this close. I'm just gonna go one more. Okay, I can get this thing. Okay, and you do that, and it works. But I don't really particularly enjoy it, Sure. And so the type of games that I enjoy would be different. So that's the great thing about this is that we can get all kinds of different experiences. And that doesn't even mean that you only want to play those kind of experiences. You want choices. You want that, hey, I only have this much time to sit down. Maybe I will play this game instead of this other one, which I'm going to have to wait until the next weekend I'm off, where I can like sit down and put a lot of time into.
Well, and I just want to clarify too that I'm not saying that I don't think every game needs to be offering an achievement or an award or the gratification of success to people, because there is something to be said for having to work really hard to go through a 100-hour game and be one of the rare people who actually gets to beat it and see that end screen or something or some reward. So that in and of itself is a rewarding process. But for me individually,
for 100 hours, that's
I've asked myself, well, why haven't I beat some of these games? And the answer is they're too damn big. They're too much for me.
The amount of time that you got to invest. In
but then I say to myself, well, I've moved on and played other games, and instead of playing those other games, I could have gone back to that game and played that. And so it's it's like at some point it's the developer's job to keep you entertained and interested, as opposed to just grinding it out, unless you want to grind it out and have that that badge of honor if that's what it's kind of been degraded to.
Grinding it out for a badge of honor.
I'm pretty sure that's an achievement in Grand Theft Auto 5.
No, that's an achievement for Miley Cyrus. All right, guys, well, we are coming up near the end of this week's Skirmish, but first we have our battle cries of the week. And I'm going to start off with my battle cry, which is actually kind of, I guess it's kind of big news. So we just heard this past week that one Mr. Steve Ballmer is who is the if you don't know, is the current CEO of Microsoft, which is, if you don't know, a really fucking huge company. And he's been with the company since day one, from what I understand, right? Like I think he's the only currently day-to-day person that's been with them the whole time.
He and Gates and Paul Allen's were friends in college, I guess.
Yeah. But he has announced that sometime in the next year, he is going to be stepping down, which I thought was kind of, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. I think I wouldn't even necessarily say that I think the guy has done per se a bad job, when he's been in the role. I mean, I think Microsoft still pretty successful company in a lot of aspects. Although I do think that they are they've had like what the Surface tablet hasn't really done quite what they hoped it would do. The Windows Phone hasn't quite done.
They
it.
haven't exactly adapted to the kind of the post PC era in quotes.
Yeah.
They haven't really
that's
adapted to that as well as Google and Apple have.
That's the kind of weird thing is I don't even know it's that they haven't adapted well. They just didn't do it quickly enough, I think. Because I'll be honest with you, I don't know if you've used either of those two products. And I'm kind of an Apple guy, so I'll admit that. But I mean, I've used the Windows Phone. Windows Phone is actually pretty damn nice. Like it's if it were not for like the App Store or even the Android Play Store, like all the options you have through those avenues, if it were just like you got just what you got on the phone when you bought it and you couldn't add anything to it, I dare say that Windows Phone actually has a pretty good argument against the some of the other guys. I mean, it's a good experience, and the Surface tablets, especially the Pro. I mean, hell, it's a fucking Windows machine. I mean, anyway, we started to get off track, but it's they've put out some interesting products that just they've been slow to adapt, and I think that Ballmer's kind of starting to realize that if he wants to make umpteen trillion dollars next year, he might want to put somebody else in the CEO spot and let them actually grow the business a little bit more. So anyway, kind of an interesting story, but the kind of an end of an era to a certain degree.
Certainly.
I think
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
stepping away.
Yeah.
All right. Well, DK, what is your battle cry this week?
My battle cry this week goes out to the upcoming Angry Video Game Nerd Adventures from
this
Screw
is
Attack Games. I've actually played this. My buddy Craig over at Screw Attack and I hung out at E3, and he gave me a hands-on demo with this title, and it kicked my butt. It's difficult, which is great because I found myself wanting to get right back in it, and I think that the team making this game really understands what it's about. It's about that old school stuff I just spoke about in the main topic, about being difficult, being a challenge, but always giving you the opportunity to feel that sense of gratification when you do make it to the end of a level or a stage. Plus, it's filled with all the crude humor and cameos that you would expect from an AVGN game. But here's what my battle cry goes out to: a really cool promo that allows one lucky person to be featured in the game as an NPC, which is pretty neat. And that happens by pre-ordering the game. So basically, if you pre-order the game through Steam between now and September 5th, not only will you save 10% on the game, which the game's only $15, so it ends up being like $13.50. But anyway, you save a little bit of cash, but more importantly, you enter your name in the hat to be immortalized within the first Angry Video Game Nerd Adventures game, and be an NPC. Now, I asked Craig why I wasn't selected to be a boss, and he said that my hair would be too much of an enemy. So,
well, it would take up the entire screen. So
Yeah.
It would. So we'll have to look forward to the sequel before DK Mining could get inside the game itself. But I'm very excited to actually play this one, and hope that if you're interested in being in the game, or at least just picking it up for a little bit of a discount, you could pre-order it now between now and September 5th. So check it out.
excellent.
Actually, he told me it was just the licensing terms you had that
Yeah,
you wanted.
they're steep.
You just wanted too much money.
Yeah, steep. Hey, those hair products don't pay for themselves, buddy.
You should think about an endorsement deal. You really should.
Yeah, or quit buying weed.
I have one with mane and tail. That's right. Come for the game,
Well,
stay for the main. Sorry.
All right, so let's move on to Brent. What's your battle cry
Let's
this week,
move
buddy?
on to Brett.
My battle cry this week goes out to a really, really fascinating article at Polygon.com entitled "XCOM's Prove AAA Game Development is High-Risk Gambling." And the article goes into depth as a case study looking at XCOM The Bureau Declassified and XCOM Enemy Unknown, both titles attempting to rejuvenate the XCOM license, which is a very old PC franchise, and bring it into a modern era. And the article just goes into detail about really kind of how crazy game development is, and how the publisher, in this case 2K, actually really nurtured both of these projects along. They allowed the creative teams to fulfill the vision that they wanted to. They allowed them to fail and try again, and fail and try again in the case of XCOM Enemy Unknown, and that ultimately they did see one of these things really pay off in a huge way, and then the other one, remains to be seen. But it's a fascinating look at how these really, really high stakes areas of the game development business, kind of how they work, and how you can throw all of this money at it, you can put the best people you can on it, but that ultimately it really is a gamble, and it's really hard to figure out immediately what it is that the game is going to be, what it is that the player needs to experience and is going to react to, and then execute that. Everything evolves so much, and there's so many moving parts that oftentimes it's easy to kind of lose sight of what it is you're creating versus what it is that you really set out to create. And so I just would encourage everybody to take a few minutes and read this article by Russ Pitts at Polygon.com. And I thought it was just a really, really interesting look into AAA game development and why sometimes those games work and why sometimes they don't. But ultimately, they are taking a gamble in the hopes that there's going to be some really, really huge payoff with a successful title. But every time is kind of a roll of the dice in a way.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, the industry itself, that's one of the big things. It is very high stakes. And I would just add that, in the case of XCOM, the reviews on the Bureau are, I think it's biggest. I'm looking at it right here. I'm yet to play it, but I'm looking forward to still checking it out despite, the kind of mediocre reviews. But I think its biggest issue so far, and maybe this is addressed in the article, is just that, playing that game is going to bring up constant comparisons. Every review, every kind of read over that I've given it, people are saying, oh, well, this is kind of like Mass Effect, or this part's kind of like, this game, blah, 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 blah. And so it's being constantly compared, where you have a situation with XCOM Enemy Unknown. It was only compared to its former self, and it improved upon that in so many ways that was a benefit to that project. And now with new DLC expansion and stuff, it's continuing to succeed. But so many things to consider when you're making a game, what it's going to be compared to, what it's not going to be related to, and I'm actually very interested to read that article. So thanks for making that your battle cry. Good one.
You're welcome. You're all welcome.
Did you say you have played it yet at this point?
I have not played the Bureau Declassified yet. No,
okay.
I was really thinking about getting it, and then at the last minute, I decided to switch over and get Splinter Cell Blacklist after seeing the co-op mode on that. So that's kind of where I spent my game budget this month.
How are you liking that so far?
I'm liking it a lot. I would like it a lot better if I actually play the goddamn co-op that I bought the game for. But as Lauren and I detailed in detail on the Axe Factor this past week, the PC co-op has not been cooperative with us so far.
It says not been co-op. All right. Well, that's too bad.
Yeah, I agree.
Sucks to be you. All right, so someone that doesn't suck to be is our member battle cry of the day. DK, you want to read our member battle cry?
Sure, I got a member battle cry. It comes from Christoph Zeiss, and it goes a little something like this. Gamescom Shamescom. I was seriously underwhelmed by each party's presentation. Maybe I expected too much after the thundering battle of this year's E3, but I felt like either side could have done much more to promote their respective new consoles. Although I like to see Sony's varied indie lineup, they showed far too little under their full price first-party titles. If they wanted to drive home the point that their console is going to have a diverse library of innovative products, they should have actually shown extended gameplay instead of just randomly announcing new titles every 10 seconds. Also, their little jab about, quote, being consistent, end quote, with their business strategy, despite being reasonably justified, felt a little immature here. Microsoft certainly got some attention by announcing their deal with FIFA 14. I think that is going to be a huge selling point for a lot of potential buyers since the franchise is quite big over here in Europe. But apart from that, however, they did nothing for me as a customer to convince me that their console stands above what Sony has got to offer. So overall, Gamescom left me exactly where I was before the event, which is what I believe you guys said last week. By the way,
that wasn't one of the options. It was either more excited or less excited, as we've explained. Come on, people.
And Christoph concludes with the statement that I think is why it's the member battle cry. By the way, he says, whichever drunk monkey was directing the camera during Sony's GC conference should be fired immediately. And I couldn't agree with that more.
I've seen animated GIFs of that everywhere.
Oh my gosh! So you're directing a press conference.
Man. I mean, he shot the footage that was shown more than any other footage of Sony's for Gamescom.
Maybe that's Sony's stealth campaign right there, huh?
Yeah.
They're like, Microsoft might have more pre-orders. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But we've got a drunk monkey running camera.
I mean, show the game. Every time it went to a big game on display, they cut to the. It's like, who cares about the crowd?
Dude, that is my biggest complaint about Sony's press conferences. Every fucking year, they keep it like on screen until like 2 seconds into the trailer,
and then
they cut back to the fucking crowd, and the trailer's like in a little tiny box somewhere. I'm like, you do know. You are showing a video of what you want people to see.
It's
so you cut
ironic.
to a video of stuff of people watching the video. I don't want to watch like when I go to a movie instead of going to the movie theater, I don't wait to come on DVD to watch a picture of the crowd watching the movie.
It's very ironic that you're making this complaint, considering one of your claims to fame is being spotted in the crowd at a Sony press event.
Hey, here's the thing.
One of those shots.
I didn't care. I mean, like, hey, fine, whatever. But my whole point is,
listen, I've seen you hit on women in bars. You're like, I was in the crowd in a Sony press conference during E3 one year.
And they're like, wait, you know Daniel Kaiser? The only thing that frustrates me more is watching Wheel of Fortune, because for the life of me, I don't understand when you watch Wheel of Fortune why they keep the camera on the person when they're selecting letters as opposed to showing the freaking puzzle on the bottom half of the screen. My wife yells at me all the time because I watch the show and I yell at it constantly for not showing the puzzle long enough.
Wheel of Fortune is still on?
You watch Wheel of Fortune?
I watch Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune almost every night. Yes, it's good for your brain. And I could kick your ass in Jeopardy.
Okay. So let me get this straight. So you're smoking weed while watching. So you're trying to replenish the cells you're killing.
That's exactly right.
All right, maybe that does work.
I'd like to buy a vowel. Sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to buy an end of this episode. How much will that cost me?
All righty. Well, that is going to do it for this week's Skirmish. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this week, and please don't join us next week because that would be silly. We won't be here.
Because we're not going to be
dumbasses.
Yeah, we're not going to be here next week, gang. We have Brent's going to Cambodia.
Yeah,
he's. I think the term is dicking off.
Oh, I thought you and Dennis Rodman were going back to Korea.
Cambodia. It's also the name of my new album. So,
wait, you have an album too?
No, I'm going on vacation. I have decided to take a little time off and enjoy some traveling with my wife, and we're going to visit some of our friends and everything. So I'm going to be visiting the West Coast and hooking up with some old friends of mine from college and all of that fun stuff. So I'm not going to be here next week, and since there's not anybody else that's going to edit the show, we're not going to be doing it.
Yeah, the monkey hasn't been trained yet. He's still operating the camera for Sony.
Yeah, he hasn't made it back from Germany.
We keep trying to get a resume from him, and all we get back are blank coloring books filled with red crayon markings. So.
Spawning the idea.
All right, well, do make sure to not forget we exist and come back the week after that, where we'll be once again cleaving the fat from the stories of the gaming stories of the day or something, whatever.
Hopefully with an Xbox One release date at that point.
That'd be nice.
Who knows? It may even be out at that point. Who knows? Anyway, I am for Daniel Kaiser and Brent Adams. I'm your host, Tony Grice. And remember, bye. See ya. See you, bye. Tell me who doesn't miss the Bozo the Clown game where they had the little buckets and you had to throw little ping pong balls in the buckets.
And they would always show
I just thought of that, but like that
right in front of it.
God, that was fucking awesome.
Yeah, Bozo the Clown was a trippy show, Holmes. I saw a kid. I saw a couple of kids actually went like they did. What was it? 5, right? There were like 5 buckets in total.
I think so. Yeah.
And I saw a kid, and like he won like a BMX bike or something.
Well, there was always like you had to like throw and like you kind of had to hit the back of the bucket.
Yeah, because
so that it would
was
bounce
gonna
forward.
But you just needed it to bounce down.
Exactly, because everybody would like throw it straight in like a dumbass, and it would bounce right out, and you'd be like, "Oh, I feel bad for you, idiot, stupid kid,
bozo,
you bozo."
That's great. Thanks for wasting our time. Back to the audience with you. Here's
Sucks
another 2 minutes of a Transformers episode we're never going to show in its entirety. Fuck you, kids.